패널로 함께해 주실 분들은 모두 5분입니다. 국립축산과학원의 권경석 연구사님, 전북대학교의 김상철 교수님, 주식회사 아이온텍의 안강훈 대표님, 리얼팜의 장익준 대표님, 그리고 주식회사 인프로의 최승혁 대표님입니다. Professor Chulju Yang of Suncheon National University will be the chairperson of this discussion. Also, we have total 5 panels. Kyung-Seok Kwon, a researcher at National Institute of Animal Science, Professor Sang-Chul Kim of Jeonbuk National University, Kang-Hoon An, CEO of IonTech, Ik-Jun Jang, CEO of Real Farm, and Seung-Hyuk Choi, CEO of Inpro will join us as a panel of discussion. 모두 힘찬 박수 부탁드립니다.
네, 2021년 탄소
Good
중립을 위한
afternoon.
축산 분야
Towards a carbon neutrality on smart livestock farming strategies, Symposium is now entering its overall discussion, panel discussion, and I am Yang Cheol-ju, the moderator for this panel discussion. Carbon neutrality and precision livestock farming are the key words for today's symposium, and I would like to thank the host, Professor Lee Sang-seok. Let's give him a round of applause. During these tough times, this very important symposium was held thanks to his efforts. Many experts from home and abroad took up long time to give valuable presentations, so we went over time, but now we have top experts from our country as our panelists. They prepared lengthy presentations, but they will actually just give you a brief summary in order to secure more time for an open discussion. As you are aware, carbon neutrality is a goal that should be achieved by 2050. It was an ambitious pledge made by our president, so we are at a very critical juncture. The carbon emission of Korea stands at 7th in the world, but the growth rate of emissions is 2nd in the world. So actually, we are being watched as one of the key countries to monitor when it comes to carbon emissions. So it is a very imminent challenge that we should resolve. We heard presentations from various countries, but when I look at China, they were lagging behind in terms of smart farming, but now they've really caught up. One example is the technology of Huawei, which is a leading 5G network company, and they are doing business in the livestock industry, especially focusing on PLF. Using smart farm, they are looking to increase the productivity of the farms and now are at a very advanced stage. Korea should really keep a close eye on the progress made in China. Now we have top experts in the field here to give you presentations as panelists, so please keenly listen to their presentations and engage in our discussion. Our first panelist will present on the direction of smart farming for the livestock industry. It's researcher Kyung-Seok Kwon from the National Institute of Animal Science. Given that we are short on time, I will make introductions very brief. So now, Mr. Kwon from the National Institute of Animal Science will talk about the future direction of smart farming. And please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. Thank you. Could we share the slides? Is there a clicker? Okay. Well, I'm Kwon Kyung-seok from the National Institute of Animal Science. Actually, I majored in agriculture engineering. So environmental control used to be the area that I used to focus on, but now I am focusing on smart farming. Today, I will talk about the path forward for smart farming in order to achieve carbon neutrality. Well, we're short on time, so I will skip parts that are well known by all of us. Let's skip the explanation on the concept of carbon neutrality or how it applies to the livestock industry. So, when we look at the two keywords, livestock and carbon neutrality, there are three challenges that we face. First is the nutrition feeding topic, second is manure upcycling, and third is smart farming. Given my major, I focus more on the smart farm area, so I will just briefly skim through the first two factors. When it comes to nutrition and feeding, there was an article recently. Recently, AI analysis is being used to get information on milk yield and feed amount, and this is used to identify the cattle's breeding value. And in the end, the ultimate goal is to reduce methane emissions by optimizing the amount of feed given to the milk cows. In the European Union, also, they are adjusting the amount of roughage and doing early release of finished cattle and methane reduction through feed additives. Next topic on manure upcycling is really important when it comes to the impact of livestock industry on the environment. So we're trying to reduce the amount of solid and liquid manure in order to achieve carbon neutrality. So there's attempts to use pyrolysis to produce a syngas to for the environment, and using biochar for carbon sequestration, or using manure as solid fuel. So we heard from the earlier presentations, but right now we are employing ICT technology to make first generation smart farms, and this is the type of farms that we can see in our country. But recently, there are additional efforts to make second generation smart farms based on big data, AI, and biometrics data. Well, although carbon neutrality is a key issue, we aren't seeing many technology towards that end. But through multi-ministry package innovative technology development, it's divided into various stages, and there are quite a few items that is relevant to carbon neutrality in that package. When it comes to smart farming, I think there are two items to focus on. First, in order to achieve carbon neutrality, we should first recognize how much emissions is taking place. Well, there is methane being emitted from enteric fermentation, and this has been found based on much research. But if we limit the scope to CO2, then we need much technology in order to address that issue. Compared to other industrial sectors, well, if we look at factories, there are many ventilation outlets where the pollutants are emitted, and it's easy to measure the emissions from those ventilation facilities. But in fact, when it comes to cows, when they are just being raised in the pasture, then we have to measure the emissions based on the individual livestock. But for other types of animals like chicken, then the accuracy of measurement comes into question. So we need to define how to measure the exact greenhouse gas emissions from our livestock sector. We need to quantify the emissions of greenhouse gases. It's important to establish the standards to that end. And another key item is perhaps applying the passive house technology or concept to the livestock industry. I'm sure you heard of it. When we talk about renewable energy or energy efficiency, we aim to achieve zero energy buildings or homes. And earlier on in one of the presentations, we heard about the closed loop system, about the air circulation. It was an item that was researched jointly with SNU. In Europe, it's called the closed loop system. So the heat that is released from buildings is recovered to heat the building, and then the fresh air is mixed with this air, and then it is fed back into the building. So it's a closed loop system. So how to commercialize this concept is being researched on. Such passive house or zero house cannot be 100% realized in the stables or animal housings, but still we can somehow apply that air circulation concept to our stables and pens. If we look at four detailed parts of this concept, well, first, heating expenses take up much of farm expenses, excluding feed or purchase of livestock. And we should aim to make more efficient energy use. So we should address the inefficient heating and cooling system. And second is we need to set design standards. In fact, we don't have a strict set of standards for designing such stables. And thirdly, we should be able to apply renewable energy to such stock rearing facilities. There was an attempt in the Jeju Island where they took CO2 generated from stables and let that flow into the greenhouse for heating purposes. Or we take waste heat from greenhouse in order to heat the stables or animal housings. So that is a grid system that has been attempted. I think that could be applied in a more broad manner in the livestock industry. And fourth, we should be able to come up with a more effective energy management system through real-time monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. It only took 5 minutes, so I appreciate your timeliness. And now let us move to our next presentation. He is going to present on strategies and direction of carbon neutral smart animal husbandry technology development. Professor Kim Sang-chul of Jeonbuk University Intelligence Robot Research Center established significant plans related to the livestock industry. Now, let me hand my microphone to him. Hello, everyone. I am Kim Sang-chul, professor of Jeonbuk University Intelligence Robot Research Center. This is such an important topic, and it is a great pleasure to discuss this issue with you. Recently, environmental issues have a lot of impact on diverse industries, and we are focusing on carbon emissions abatement. And in order to move towards carbon neutrality in the livestock sector, we need to have a vision, and we also need to have technological alternatives. And these technological alternatives need to be developed, and what kind of strategies can we implement to develop those technologies are some things that some topics that I would like to cover in today's presentation. So first is environmental issues of the livestock industry. As you may all know, there are a lot of environmental issues in the livestock industry. The livestock industry accounts for 18% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Because of this, the livestock industry is now pointed a finger at as the key contributor of greenhouse gas emissions. Moreover, methane and nitrogen oxide are also significant issues. Now, the livestock industry accounts for 65% of nitrogen oxide and 37% of methane and 9% of CO2 emitted by humans. Greenhouse effect of nitrogen oxide and methane is 296 times and 23 times stronger than CO2 respectively, which points to the fact that reducing emissions is such an important issue in the livestock industry. Then, let's take a look at the influence of the domestic livestock industry to global greenhouse gas emissions. You might think that the domestic livestock industry is very small, so it will have an insignificant impact in the global greenhouse gas emissions, and the figure actually stands at 0.28%. Let's look at Korea's greenhouse gas emissions per year. Agriculture accounts for about 2.9% of the total greenhouse emissions in Korea, and most of these come from the soil where mixed breeds of seeds are produced. So it's not really that much, but if we look at the proportion from a bare ground farming, it's about 50%. So the domestic livestock industry is not emitting a lot, but from a national level, we are focusing on carbon neutrality and we are pushing forward, pushing towards carbon neutrality. So that's why the livestock industry should also endeavor to achieve carbon neutrality. The livestock industry's issue is actually not about carbon emissions, it's actually about increasing production, and that's why we need to adopt and implement many ICT technologies. For example, PLF, precision livestock farming. Let's look at the target of our greenhouse gas emissions reduction. We have in total 75% of reduction target, and the agricultural sector emits 21.2 million tons, which is 2.9% of the total domestic emissions. And we just need to reduce 5% as FAO announced. If we adopt smart farm technologies, we might be able to abate 30%. So reduction of 5% is a very easy target for us. So smart farm and smart farm technologies need to be gradually and continuously adopted to our livestock industry. And we believe that if we move forward like this, we will be able to achieve carbon neutrality and our target for greenhouse gas abatement. Let's look at the possibility of solving the carbon emissions related issues. In the morning and in the afternoon, a lot of presenters have presented on technologies that could solve carbon emissions and presented on technological innovations, and we should refer to those technological advancements to move forward. Moreover, the government is also producing and distributing a lot of ICT technologies. We are now in the process of distributing the first generation and second generation technology and system is now coming up. The first generation is focused on environmental factors, and they made decision related based on environmental factors. However, the second generation system is about sensors and other data and impact on breeding and growth, and these are made into big data, and artificial intelligence or AI analyzes the data that is accumulated. So that's the biggest difference between the first generation and second generation. And because you have heard a lot of explanations about these first generation and second generation systems, I will just keep it brief. Anyways, Korea is now focusing on carbon neutrality in the livestock sector, and this is kicking into high gear globally. So we have a lot of responsibilities and we have a very, very long way to go. We need to take an aggressive approach to adopt more ICT technologies in the livestock sector. And we should allow well-establishment of technologies in individual farmers. So I have some suggestions. First suggestion is about data. We are accumulating a lot of data, but the data is not being leveraged enough. So we need to increase the use of data that is accumulated. In smart farms, there are a lot of integrity related technologies and data, and those data need to be used. And second strategy is the establishment of a second generation zero carbon smart livestock farming model. We need to develop an enclosed second generation smart stable structure design technology per livestock type. As I've already mentioned, this enclosed second generation smart table structure design technology and development, technological developments related to this second generation structure and design is very important. And third suggestion is about crop livestock greenhouse carbon circulation building type livestock farming model. So this is a comprehensive carbon circulation model. We need to develop this kind of industry model. As Professor Yang said, building type livestock system is much implemented in big farms. So if Korea wants to achieve carbon neutrality, we should be able to build a building type smart livestock farming model where carbon circulation is possible, and that's how we can establish zero carbon K livestock industry model. To leverage smart ICT technologies, we need infrastructure as a nation. And we need to provide this kind of data to our people and farmers so that they can deliver tangible benefits to our farmers. Through these kinds of comprehensive efforts, we will be able to achieve carbon neutrality in the livestock sector. If we go as planned, I believe that younger generations will be able to benefit from jobs that are created in the domestic livestock sector. Moreover, healthy food and healthy food will be provided to our people, and for our animals, animal welfare will be guaranteed. So this livestock industry will be a basic social asset for us. We need to achieve sustainable green stock breeding New Deal, and this is going to lead to farms where dreams come true. So if we had our presenters here, we might have been able to ask a lot of questions, but we are here as a panelist with a lot of experts. So we would like to hear your input, and I hope that this venue could this event could serve as an opportunity. Thank you so much. Now, Professor An from the Ionic will talk about the automated feed system. China, Vietnam are importing, and he's planning to import his products to these countries.
안녕하십니까.
Hello, I am An Gang-won, CEO of IonTech. Today, we are focusing on the concept of carbon neutrality, which was heavily covered in the earlier part of today's symposium, so I will skip that part. I will focus more on the current status of domestic smart farming industry and export or import prospects of technologies for smart farming. From 2014, we were working on incorporating ICT to stock breeding. We started with the hog farming sector, and now it has been expanded and applied to chicken farming, dairy, and also Korean cattle farming. In the pig farming sector, there were 10 to a dozen items, but now more than 30 technology items are being supplied. If we look at it year by year, in 2014, about 20 farms were supplied with such technology. The number was increased to 150 in 1 year, and as of last year, more than 1,000 farms were supplied with smart farming technologies. If we look at Korean cattle, 900 farms incorporated such equipments, and for dairy farms, 650 farms have the equipments. The equipments that were most heavily supplied were estration detections, surveillance cameras, and environment monitoring, and also automatic feeders. These were the top items, and there are also water supply devices or weight scales or other PCs or feed bin managed devices that were supplied thanks to the government support. Well, looking at it by type of livestock, when it comes to Korean cattle, the highest supplied device was estration detection and automated feeder. For pig farming, it was automated feeder and surveillance cameras and environment monitoring. For dairy and chicken farming, the same applied. Environment monitoring devices were some of the most popular devices. If we look at the domestic production of the equipment, the highest number of domestically produced equipment is used in the pig farming industry, and I believe this is the fruit that was born by heavy investment to the R&D and technological development. If we look at the market share, then sensors, motors, controllers, and control softwares are areas where the domestic production is very active. But when it comes to controller and control software, we are seeing heavy investments ongoing in other countries also. Automated feeder and environment control are the most looked for devices from the dairy industry, and I think there's high export potential. And the same goes for the hog farming industry also. For 8 years, ICT technologies were equipped in the farms of various stock breeding farms. Well, it boosts productivity, but there are also limitations when it comes to applying such technology to the farms. Well, from our perspective, these are some of the limitations that we find in the farms. Well, when it comes to the technical aspect, since the environment is lagging behind when it comes to the livestock industry, the durability or reliability are some issues compared to other sectors. When it comes to operation of the equipment, although the technology have high performance, if some of the aged farmers who are not familiar with ICT technology are the ones who are going to use these technologies, so they may not be fully leveraging the technical capacities of what is being provided. And there's also a limitation when it comes to integration. Although we are seeing huge progress in AI or big data technology, but to fully leverage such technology, we need to gather a huge amount of data. And for collection purposes, sometimes it is collected automatically through devices, but sometimes those records should be managed manually by the farmers. But this could be additional workload for the farmers. So platform companies are looking to sophisticate their platforms through leveraging huge amount of data, but we need to figure out how we can increase the amount of data entry into those technologies. I will briefly talk about export potentials of these technologies. China and Vietnam are two destinations. For China, the 20% of the world population are Chinese. When it comes to the pig, 50% of the pig population are found in China. In Sichuan or Honan districts, more than half of the pig population in China are concentrated. We are looking at Tianjin, and we have active partnerships in that area. When we look at the Vietnam market, we are still looking for an agent, local agent. Well, with big feed producers, they made inroads into the Vietnamese market already. So now, equipment manufacturers should establish consortiums with the feed producers, which would be very effective for the equipment manufacturers to also enter foreign markets where the feed producers also established a foothold. Well, looking at some numbers for the Chinese and Vietnamese markets, the two countries are still remaining at the advancement level that we saw in the 80s in Korea. But recently in China, large-scale farms are being built recently, so I think we already heard about this point, but they're catching on or even exceeding Korea's ICT levels. In Korea, there is more than 11 million pigs, but such large-scale farms are not the majority when it comes to China or Vietnam. In Korea, but within a short period of time, the farms grew rapidly in terms of scale, and we believe that will be the case with China and Vietnam also. They will see rapid growth in the scale of farms. When it comes to patents for these equipments, there are 100 or so patents when it comes to feeders, but there were more than 800 patents that were filed in China for feeders. And so we can see that patent filing is more active in China. Well, carbon regulation and environment regulation is more strict in China, so I think they are seeing more active technological development and thus leading to high patent filing rates. Based on a survey on the ICT companies, around 10 companies are already exporting their technology, but there are many that have no vision about exporting their technology. It may be due to lack of technical prowess, but other 25 companies have plans to export their products. So we would have to review how the government can support these companies to allow them to export their products. And we should look at potential for collaboration between the industries, academia, and the government. Companies are looking to develop convergence of ICT technologies, and that is not a choice, it's a must for the companies. So in support of such efforts, the academia or the government should focus more on development of source technologies. Once we secure the source technologies, then this could lead to more fruitful collaboration with the companies and the industries. This year, the government launched a multi-ministry package and opened it for bidding. And the direction pursued by each consortium may be different, so we should evaluate which consortium has most potential. Well, we can never know for sure, but still, based on a keen review of the consortiums, we should open up many opportunities that would be fruitful. Large conglomerates should be matched with SMEs because SMEs may lack the financial resources. Well, for companies like us, IonTech, we often walk to large conglomerates with our proposals, but it's not very easy to achieve partnerships with large conglomerates, so perhaps the government can support to this end. Well, in the end, we should aim to successfully incorporate ICT for a more successful livestock industry. Thank you. Thank you.
장익준 주식회사 니얼팜 대표.
Next, we would like to invite Chang Ik-jun, CEO of Real Farm Incorporation. He is going to present on sustainable smart livestock industry and precision livestock farming. He is a part of smart farms data integration. He has a lot of expertise in this field, and I request you to keep your presentation brief. Hello everyone, I'm Chang Ik-jun of Real Farm Incorporation. I will keep my presentation brief. As the moderator has introduced, we not only provide hardware, but we also develop software, so we are providing a total management system to the livestock industry. However, we need more sophistication and we have a long way to go to make more profits. But we have a 10-year of vision towards the future. Sustainable livestock is not really, it doesn't fit the topic of today, but one of the most important issues of the livestock industry is labor shortage. It is not only about domestic workers, but also about foreign workers. As far as I understand, it could be different, but 50% of labor force decreased and shrank. So a lot of families are putting in their family labor to sustain themselves. Now, COVID-19 is decreasing and we are moving towards with COVID-19. However, if rapid transformation does not take place and the situation gets worse, I think that there will be a lot of challenges that the livestock industry will face. Feed price also increased significantly, and this year it increased 2 times, and this is an unprecedented increase of feed price. This is because of some environmental issues, including the increase of raw material production and also logistics cost in price increase. In LA, there are a lot of logistical disturbance, and in the UK, there are a lot of difficulties of truckers because they cannot have access to enough oil. So, looking at all these situations, I am thinking about this question of how I can sustain myself when the livestock industry declines. So, this is just my concern. But I just brought this because I thought that this could help our discussion. ESG management has become an emerging discussion point across the globe. In the previous presentation, we talked about Korean farming situations, and second, we talked about profits. So younger generations and skilled workers and the size of workforce itself are the issues that are being discussed. And another issue is stench and also manure processing. These three issues, when they are combined, the intersection is the objective and target of the environment. I am actually reluctant to participate in this kind of international symposium, but because I thought that we have a lot of experts here, that's why I participated. We are currently importing a lot of pigs from other countries. Denmark in spring and fall, for 2 to 4 weeks, people cannot file a complaint related to stench. This is because manure processing, it will lead to stench. So during this period, we should understand. So this kind of public consensus, reaching this kind of public consensus is very significant, and I really look forward to this kind of consensus in Korea too. And regarding pig breeding, the United States proposed this data. Over the past 50 years, a lot of efforts have been made within the US pork industry. First is water use reduced by 41% per pound of pork, and land use went down 78% per pound of pork, and carbon footprint decreased by 35% per pound of pork. And these are definitely our long-term objective and long-term targets. With a long-term perspective, these are the targets that we need to achieve. Of course, I don't know the validity of the data and accuracy of this data, but I do believe that these are the targets that are worth mentioning and worth pondering upon. And sensing technology, big data, algorithm, and providing services based on these technologies. What is important is these two. First is durability, and second is accuracy. And a lot of global companies and businesses are putting a lot of effort into increasing durability and precision. Then, how? I think that sensing and sensor technologies are important, but I believe that the future lies in image. In section 1 and 2, there have been a lot of discussions related to this. The image is a very precise index and indicator that farmers can use to make a precise and accurate decision. So based on image, we can develop and we should develop global technologies. And second is identification. The livestock industry cannot afford to invest a lot of costs, and because of environmental factors and challenges, it is difficult to adopt all the technologies. So what is important is price. We need to make it cheap, and how are we going to implement this in individual farms is also an important question. And integration is another keyword. Whether the equipment is produced domestically or in other countries, we need integration. We've tried this, but we failed. But anyways, we should be able to at least manage the equipment that is produced not only in Korea but also in other countries. And as another presenter has said, we need to reduce the manual entry of data. Manual entry of data should be minimized, and this is going to increase accuracy, leading to high quality services. And lastly, not only precision farming, but I think that the first generation model is the position where we're at. This is where we stand. We should develop this first generation model. And advancement of first generation model is important because this is how businesses generate profits. As of now, the first generation model is not advanced adequately, which means that profits are not generated enough. So that's why I think that advancement and sophistication of the first generation model is important. And another roadmap we need to establish is AI-based decision making. But anyways, the most important part is it needs to support decision making. Data accumulation itself is not important, but supporting decision based on the data is important. And the next step is big data and other advanced technologies. Kakao and Naver and other platform businesses will introduce these technologies within 5 years. And Coupang has gone to Nasdaq, listed itself in Nasdaq. So many global businesses will be preparing for this. So I think that a company that can support this and provide these technologies will emerge. So let me summarize. Now, the central government is focusing on reducing the population of livestock and increasing more products in order to protect our environment. However, because I import genetic livestock products, I believe that there are a lot of technologies that enables reducing the increasing the productivity by increasing feed efficiency. Feed efficiency could sound very difficult, but actually it's a very simple concept. When we look at the feed efficiency of pigs, when they are produced, what is the most wasteful is when they die in the end before they give birth. So we need to establish a total management system where experts can join together and share their knowledge so that we can prevent those events from taking place. And carbon abatement is also another hot topic, and I think that precision farming will definitely lead to carbon abatement, as if we miss the estrus cycle, then pigs and cattle, they need to be fed for 20 to 30 days more. We are trying very hard to feed low protein feed these days. So that's why precision farming and this estrus cycle monitoring is very important. If we miss this estrus cycle, then feed will increase, which leads to increase of carbon emissions at a national level. So experts of the livestock industry and researchers of the livestock industry and should focus on how ICT technologies could be adopted and implemented in the livestock industry. And this is going to enable carbon neutrality and carbon emissions abatement. And rather than focusing on disposal, we should focus more on co-prosperity and coexistence so that we can have more intimate connections with farmers. Thank you.
마지막으로요. 우리 최승혁 주식회사
Last but not least, we have the CEO of Impro INC, Choi Seung-hyuk. He will talk about how to recycle energy in the rural communities. Good afternoon. I am CEO of Impro, Choi Seung-hyuk. Well, we are a very newcomer to smart farming industry. We are aiming to make a platform for a smart farm. And well, Real Pro's CEO, Mr. Chang, said that it's a bit too early for that. But it's a great honor for me to take part in this symposium. And well, rather than focusing on the slides, I want to tell you that while we are exploring many technologies, but I will just sum up my talk to 2 points. Well, carbon neutrality in the livestock industry is a hot topic, and the companies are looking to how to derive value chains out of the trends. And although we did not have this in mind when we first started our business, if we look at what we commercialized, we saw carbon efficiency in the automated ordering system of feed. If the farm runs out of feed, then there
that is detected, the shortage of feed is detected through the feed bin sensor. There are many ways. There's infrared rays or many other ways to sense how the feed bin is being emptied out. Well, in the past, people had to give us a call to order feed, or the sales reps had to visit the farms door to door. But now, through automatic census, feed is automatically ordered, and this reduced the frequency of feed orders, and it cut back on logistics cost. Cutting back on logistics cost definitely can be translated to reduction in carbon emissions. And we are also providing a prediction service on when the farms will run out of feed. So this increases the operation efficiency of the farms, which thereby also leads to carbon abatement, which is around 30% reduction of carbon emissions. So this is how our service contributes to carbon
한 가지 더 탄소저 중립을 위한 저희 또 기술과
reduction.
그래서 마을 공동체 잠깐 얘기를 했었는데
Also, we briefly
지역에서는 그냥
mentioned
마을 공동체의 어떤
the village community.
뭐 이끌어내서 사업화를 하는 것이 아니라
Rather,
리사이클이나 업사이클링에 대한 얘기를
well,
좀
actually, we rather focus on the recycling or upcycling potentials of the community. So when animal waste is generated, there were many attempts to make use out of it. They are fermented and gather the fermentation gas to heat the greenhouses, or they're used as compost or natural fuel, biofuel.
성공하지 못했죠. 좀 가만히
But
보면
those attempts were not successful. Only
본격적으로 시범적으로
projects were launched at the farm level, and it wasn't able to scale.
사업화에 드레싱을 하고 있는 방법
But what we are trying to do is to achieve standardization and make it easier for farms to just implement technology, which would, in the end, lead to income increase on the community level. We are very seeing a trend of increased leisure activities, so we can use those gases that are emitted as heating energy.
파악 시스템이 단순히 어떤 시설이나
This is an example of upcycling. So, automating facilities or using big data to make projections are all possibilities, but all of these potentials can be integrated to strengthen services like the ones that we are providing for an automated order of feed, which would all tie into a holistic value chain. That is a vision that we are pursuing. Thank you.
많이 단축시켜 주셔서
Thank you for making your presentations very brief and concise. Well, with regards to carbon neutrality, including our own president, many are voicing concerns and putting an emphasis on it. So,
탄소가 그렇게 많지 않은데
even though the carbon emissions from the agricultural sector is not as bad as we think, it's in fact from the overall emissions, it's only 2%, and livestock accounts for only half of it. But there is just a common awareness or perception that livestock industry is a major contributor to carbon emissions,
하다 보니
and
고기, 가짜 고기 뭐 이런
that is
비판은
why production of artificial meat or fake beef is
있다는 얘기가 있습니다. 그래서 이런 것들이
being actively pursued by many, and this is posing a great threat to the livestock industry.
극복하기 위해서는
In order to overcome such threats,
스마트 축산
precision livestock farming and smart farming are some options that we can leverage. Since Korea is IT powerhouse, we should be able to apply the technology to livestock industry and export that as a product in itself to other countries. The global population stands at 7 or almost 8 billion, and no one can live without eating. So agriculture and the stock breeding industry are essential industries for humanity. Well, carbon neutrality is important, but
no one will be willing to starve for that goal. So that is what we should keep in mind. Well, all the presentations were very lengthy, but the panelists managed to catch up on time. So I think we still can afford to take one or two questions from the floor. If you have any questions, please speak up. Please tell us who you are, where you're from, and please pose your questions to us.
예, 그러면은 질문이 없는 관계로 우리
Okay, because there is no
김상철
question,
탄소 배출이 우리 농업
Professor Kim,
많은 비중을
you said that the
않다라고
farming industry doesn't account for a big part of the carbon emissions. However, it is publicized as if the livestock industry emits a lot of carbon emissions, and this is leading to controversies related to fake beef. How should we respond to this? Do you have any solutions to these problems? Yes, this is true. In the total agricultural industry accounts for only 2.9% of the total greenhouse gas emissions in Korea, and amongst that, the livestock industry accounts for 1.3%. The total greenhouse gas emissions in Korea is huge, but the livestock industry accounts for a very significant portion. However, many people say that the livestock industry is accountable for the high greenhouse gas emissions, and a lot of people bring some data that only focuses on the carbon emissions of the livestock industry, leading to misunderstandings that the livestock industry is accountable for carbon emissions. And to overcome these, we need to communicate and interact with our farmers. However, only talking is not adequate. We need concrete actions. We need to provide specific and concrete statistics and figures. And because the livestock industry is very important and it provides food to people, we need to reach a public consensus regarding the insignificant contribution of the livestock industry to carbon emissions. Now we have the target of achieving carbon neutrality. The carbon emissions could decrease, however, technologically and from an engineering and from feeds point of view, sustainability is the key. Methane emissions and greenhouse gas emissions abatement is important, and we need continued efforts in these respects. Sustainable, smart farming technologies are being developed all over the globe, but the Korean market is very small. But even given the small market size of Korea, we believe that we should focus on developing these technologies so that we can export those technologies. And we should be armed with competitiveness so that we can compete in the global market. So I believe that this is definitely a market with a great potential. We do have competitiveness in the ICT industry, and we are very swift and we're very fast in conducting a lot of projects and works. And going forward, we will be able to fully leverage the technologies that we can develop in the future. So let us collaborate and let us have an aligned view and aligned objective going forward. And then we will be able to move into a brighter future. Thank you for your remarks. Is there any additional question?
예, 저기 마이크
Okay, please bring him the microphone, or you can come up to the stage.
네, 안녕하십니까. 인프로의 정승백입니다.
Hi, I am Jong Seung-baek from InPro. I have a question to researcher Kwon. Well, in the National Institute of Animal Science, there are many researches being conducted on livestock technologies. If well, President Moon announced carbon neutrality goal this year, but the policy direction might change as the administration changes. And how is the livestock industry preparing to respond to such shifts in the government policies? Thanks for the question. It's a very tough question for me to answer. But as I was putting together my presentation on carbon neutrality, I talked to my colleague who were actually focusing on the topic. They voiced similar concerns or points that you just raised. As carbon neutrality is becoming a hot potato, we are seeing many items in policymaking, but whether such keynote in policymaking will be maintained even when a new administration is launched is something we can't predict. But we think that since this is a global trend for carbon neutrality, I think it will be maintained even if we see a new administration. I watched a documentary film yesterday. In the past, we were more worried about ozone destruction. And ozone layer is being well recovered on a global scale currently, but we are still seeing many extreme weather events due to global warming. Carbon is the culprit that is actually unavoidable. So this will be a problem that is here to stay no matter what administration comes in to power. And I had to skip some parts of my presentation, but going back, fine dust was the key issue 2-3 years back, and we even saw presidential committees on green growth and fine dust being established in Korea. But we have the National Presidential Committee on Climate Change and the fine dust issues. It's all being integrated under one single presidential committee, and that committee is spearheading policymaking for carbon neutrality, and all other departments will follow the trend. Did that answer your question? Do we have any more questions from the floor?
시간이 많이 지체돼서 시간을
Since
단축해 주시려고
we
질문 안
went
하시는 걸로 알고요.
over time, I
사실
think you are
제가 한
holding
10여 년
back your
전에
questions.
국회에서
Well, more
ICT
than 10 years
융합
ago,
심포지엄을
an
제가 이제
ICT
사회를
convergence
보면서
symposium
이게
was
그
held, and I was the
농림부의 정보
moderator
담당
there.
예산이 너무 적다. 10배에서 한 100배
And
올리자. 가지고
issues were
예산을
raised about
제가
how the
장관
budget for the
자문위원을 하면서
agriculture sector was
10배로
too
올린다.
small, so
그
it was
다음 해
actually
예산을. 근데
increased by 10
지금의 속도가
times in the
빠른 것
following year.
같지만 저는
Although we
결코
think
빠르지
we are
않다.
moving at a fast
아까
pace currently, I don't
중국의
agree with
축산이
such
우리보다
view.
엄청
We saw the
뒤져
case in
있었는데
China
지금은
where
엄청
they were lagging
앞서간다는
behind in
생각이
terms
들
of smart
정도입니다.
farming, but
그래서
now they are even
저는
exceeding
여기
the Korean
우리
smart farming technology
축산가원에서도 오셨는데
level
앞으로 이런 쪽을
in terms of
좀 더
advancement. So
이렇게 신경 써서
we have participants from the government. I urge you that we need more policies to support our industry, or else we will really fall behind from the global perspective. Thank you for your interest in this topic and attending this symposium. We have 3 companies participating in our symposium today. I hope you will see successful results, and I really wish I could see Korean technologies developed at your companies being exported to other countries so that Korea becomes a leader in terms of smart livestock in the world. So why don't we close the panelist discussion? And last but not least, I would like to invite Professor Lee for the closing remarks. Thank you.
네, 마지막 세션인 전문가 패널 토의가 있었습니다. 이제 이번 행사의 마지막 순서죠. 국립순천대학교의 이상석 교수님의 폐회사가 있겠습니다. 이상석 교수님 단상위로 모시겠습니다.
예, 여러분들 수고 많으셨습니다.
Thank you everyone for your participation. I would like to extend my gratitude to all the participants of the International Symposium on Livestock Farming and Carbon Neutrality. My special appreciation goes to staffs of the International Agriculture Exposition, 전라남도 Province Agriculture Technology Institute, and professors who participated as presenters and moderators. Agriculture transforms the world. This is a very important phrase. The 2021 International Symposium on Livestock Farming and Carbon Neutrality is held as part of the 2021 International Agricultural Exhibition. This symposium is held to share precision farming and smart technologies of the US, Europe, and Korea to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. In 2021, methane abatement agreement and greenhouse gas-related issues have emerged as important discussion points. At a time where climate action is necessary as a responsible member of the international society, ICT technologies in the livestock sector could be a key solution. For that, first-generation smart farm is now being widely adopted and second-generation smart farm is being developed and works are underway for its application on site. I hope that this event could serve as an opportunity to lay a sound foundation for the smart farm industry by sharing expertise and hearing insights from experts in the United States, the Netherlands, and Korea. Once again, I extend my sincere appreciation to off and online participants who graced today's symposium with their presence. With this, we will close today's symposium, and lastly, my thanks also go to Harisco and researchers of Animal Resources Sciences from Suncheon National University. Thank you.